Now, please join us and welcome our special music, Pie Jesu.
I invite you now to join in the spirit of meditation. You may want to do so by sitting up straight in your chair. Close your eyes if you wish to. Leave them slightly open. Put your feet flat on the floor to ground you to the earth. And slowly take in a nice deep breath and gently release it, releasing all of the stress of the week. These words are from the psychologist and liberal Christian Richard Rohr. Easter is not just the final chapter of Jesus' life, but the final chapter of history. Death does not have the last word. Love is the energy that sustains the universe, moving us toward a future of resurrection. We do not even need to call it love or God or resurrection for its work to be done. Great love and great suffering bring us back to God, and I believe this is how Jesus himself walked humanity back to God. It is not just a path of resurrection and rewards, but a path that includes death and woundedness. If matter is inhabited by God, then matter is somehow eternal. And when the creed says we believe in the resurrection of the body, it means our bodies too, not just Jesus's body, as in him, so also in all of us. In the resurrection, the single physical body of Jesus moved beyond all limits of space and time into a new notion of physicality and light. which includes all of us in its embodiment. Death and life are two sides of the same coin. You cannot have one without the other. Each time you surrender, each time you trust the dying, your faith is led to a deeper level and you discover a larger self underneath. Please join now in a moment of silent meditation.
This morning's reading is Resurrection according to the Gospel of John. Early on the first day of the week, while it was still dark, Mary Magdalene came to the tomb and saw that the stone had been removed from the tomb. So she ran and went to Simon Peter and the other disciple, the one whom Jesus loved, and said to them, "They have taken the Lord out of the tomb, and we do not know where they have laid him." Then Peter and the other disciple set out and went toward the tomb. The two were running together, but the other disciple outran Peter and reached the tomb first. He bent down to look in and saw the linen wrappings lying there, but he did not go in. Then Simon Peter came, following him, and went into the tomb. He saw the linen wrappings lying there, and the cloth that had been on Jesus' head, not lying with the linen wrappings, but rolled up in a place by itself. The other disciple, who reached the tomb first, also went in, and he saw and believed, for as yet they did not understand the scripture, that he must rise from the dead. The disciples returned to their homes. But Mary stood weeping outside the tomb. As she wept, she bent over to look into the tomb and saw two angels in white sitting where the body of Jesus had been lying, one at the head and the other at the feet. They said to her, "Woman, why are you weeping?" She said to them, "They have taken away my Lord, and I do not know where they have laid him." When she said this, she turned around and saw Jesus standing there, but she did not know that it was Jesus. Jesus said to her, "Woman, why are you weeping? Whom are you looking for?" Supposing him to be a gardener, she said to him, "Sir, if you have carried him away, tell me where you have laid him, and I will take him away." Jesus said to her, "Mary." She turned and said to him in Hebrew, "Rabbi," which means teacher. Jesus said to her, "Do not hold on to me, because I have not yet ascended to the Father. But go to my brothers and say to them, I am ascending to my Father and your Father, to my God and your God." Mary Magdalene went and announced to the disciples, "I have seen the Lord." And she told them that he said these things to her. When it was evening on that day, the first day of the week, and the doors of the house where the disciples had met were locked for fear of the Jews, Jesus came and stood among them and said, "Peace be with you." After he said this, he showed them his hands and his side. Then the disciples rejoiced when they saw the Lord. Jesus said to them again, "Peace be with you. As the Father has sent me, so I send you." When he said this, he breathed on them and he said to them, "Receive the Holy Spirit. If you forgive the sins of any, they are forgiven them. If you retain the sins of any, they are retained." But Thomas, who was called the twin, one of the 12, was not with them when Jesus came. So the other disciples told him, "We have seen the Lord." But he said to them, unless I see the marks of the nails in his hands and put my finger in the mark of the nails and my hand in his side, I will not believe." A week later, his disciples were again in the house and Thomas was with them. Although the doors were shut, Jesus came and stood among them and said, "Peace be with you." Then he said to Thomas, "Put your finger here and see my hands. Reach out your hand and put it in my side. Do not doubt, but believe." Thomas answered him, "My Lord and my God." Jesus said to him, "Have you believed because you have seen me? Blessed are those who have not seen me and yet have come to believe."
Book in the Bible has an agenda behind it. Here in the Gospel according to John, we find no exception. We see in this story of Thomas asking to feel the wounds of Jesus a particular commentary on the nature of faith and empirical evidence. And it is a partisan opinion at that. Faith, John tells us, is simply something to be accepted. If you have to look around for proof, then it isn't really faith. How much better the faith of those who do not require such tests of evidence as Thomas did? Well, first we need to set the context a bit. It is highly unlikely that Jesus' disciple named John actually wrote the book that bears his name, nor the book of Revelations. Much more likely, it was written by one or more of John's followers. Indeed, the author of the Gospel of John is such a fan of John's that he's referred to not by name, but as the beloved disciple. We're also fairly certain that the book of John was written almost 100 years after Jesus was born, making it by far the latest of the four Gospels. So we can see how a group of Christians, probably all of them having converted to Christianity well after Jesus' death, would find some reassurance in that line that says, "Blessed are those who have not seen, yet have come to believe." What's particularly interesting is that Thomas, too, had something of a following. Someone wrote a Gospel of Thomas that was not included in the Bible, but was written during the time of Matthew, Mark, and Luke, and shares common sources with those three books. Thomas's gospel was very different, however, in portraying Jesus's life and teachings. The followers of Thomas were what we call Gnostic Christians, meaning that they believed that Jesus did not actually become human, taking on actual flesh. For a God to become flesh, they said, would be demeaning to God's infinite perfection. And so they believed Jesus was only divine, not human. So there they are, the followers of John and the followers of Thomas, both Christians, but with their own interpretations. Both groups have their favorite disciple, whose teaching they revere over others. And in the case of John's, his followers are writing a gospel biography of Jesus. Meantime, taking some swipes at the followers of Thomas. It's a little like rivals meeting in the March Madness tournament, each side not only rooting for their team, but kind of diminishing the other team at the same time. John's gospel emphasizes Jesus's flesh, hence this rather gruesome scene of Thomas of all people, insisting on feeling around Jesus's body to make sure he could feel where the nails went in and where the centurion had cut into his side. Thomas, and by implication his followers, who don't believe in Jesus's flesh, may need such proofs, but the truly faithful followers of the beloved disciple John do not. Even Son House gets in on the act, singing about John's gospel. Well, history is unkind to Thomas. He is dubbed Doubting Thomas for his insistence to feel Jesus's wounds. Later, the reformer Martin Luther exclaimed, "What is more miserable than uncertainty?" Faith is what saves. Faith that Jesus died and was resurrected on this Easter morning, Luther teaches. Luther says that if you entertain doubt about that fact, then you are courting damnation. Nothing less than complete and 100% faith will save you. Faith and doubt are for Luther irreconcilable experiences. The death and resurrection of Christ is insufficient to take us into is sufficient to take us into heaven. All one needs to do, says Luther, is to go along with what John's saying in his gospel. Have faith and don't doubt. Wow. That's a pretty tall order, isn't it? To believe fully and completely that a man who lived 2,000 years ago died and came back to life can be a pretty tough pill to swallow. It sounds kind of silly when you put it that way, actually. Protestants embrace this and call this the absurdity of the cross. Rationally, it makes no sense, yet there it is, and you have to take it on faith. If we take a step back and look at this proposition, it can seem well nigh impossible. The pragmatist in us yearns for some evidence, some tangible thing that we can point to and say, there it is. There's some little piece of empirical evidence that reassures us that, yes, in fact, the story is true. Some of you maybe are or have been scientists, people who rely on reason for information and base hypotheses off of that data. Certainly all of us accept the validity of science. I cannot myself reproduce any scientific experiment, but I take it as fact the conclusions of science. That perspective seems to be far away from what John and Luther are proposing. Ever since Galileo, we've had this duality, science and religion, reason versus faith. And yet there have been those who have tried to bridge this gulf. Mother Teresa, who lived a life as close to a saint as there has ever been in our time, struggled with her faith. Indeed, after her death, her journals were found. In some of them, she confesses to feeling the absence of God, the opposite of a mystical experience of faith that Luther might demand. And so what does she do? She helps even more orphan children in India. It is too bad that Mother Teresa didn't talk about this more when she was alive. It would have been fascinating to hear her reflect on this. But for her, it wasn't about faith. It was about how you lived your life. She was action-oriented. What you do matters, even if what you believe is filled with doubt. William Ellery Channing, the founder of Unitarianism in America, tells the story of his father's faith. Channing grew up in a very strict Calvinist household in which his father ruled with an iron fist. His father's will was law and his word was a commandment. Once when Channing was a young boy, but old enough to remember, his family went to hear the local preacher who was occupying the pulpit that Sunday. This was when all of New England and all of the colonies were being swept up in religious fervor and excitement, is what we call it then. The preacher that the Channing family heard preached a strong gospel of this have faith or else. Quote, believe or go straight to hell and let me spend the next half hour describing to you the torments of hell. One of those sermons. Now, being an impressionable child, Channing was scared out of his wits. He had nightmares after hearing this sermon. He was afraid that any little misstep on his part would be an indication that he was destined for hellfire for sure. For many days, the young Channing could find no relief from his fear of this angry God and spent a lot of his time thinking about what might happen to him or his family as a result. One day, Channing overheard a conversation that his father was having with one of the neighbors about this new preacher in town and the reaction that he was getting. Channing's father commented, "Sound doctrine that." Channing was appalled when he heard his father give his assent and affirmation to such a terrifying idea. And why is it, Channing thought, that if my father so firmly agrees with this new minister who is preaching hellfire and brimstone, that he hasn't really done anything about it? If you were truly convinced that hell was right around the corner, then wouldn't you live more carefully? Wouldn't you be paranoid? Wouldn't your life change in some way as a result of that belief? Young William noted that his father may have intellectually agreed with that preacher. His life and his actions didn't seem to conform to it. Now, William Ellery Channing would grow up to become a minister and well-respected preacher in his own right. He argued that faith and reason are not mutually exclusive, but rather enhance each other. Contrary to what the followers of John or Martin Luther may think, doubt has an important role to play. Imagine, if you will, with me, imagine you are Thomas in the story that John tells from his point of view. All of your friends just saw Jesus and you missed it. I think this is maybe the best argument for coming to church on a regular basis. Hey man, you should have been here last Sunday. Jesus was here. And so to all of those of you who come to church on Easter and Christmas, beware of what you're missing on the other days of the week. Anyway, let's pretend that you're Thomas. What do you think when you hear this story? Do you just accept it as it is? Or do you have a few questions for your friends? Maybe you want to feel around for those holes in his hands before you're able to proclaim, my Lord and my God. Seems to me that feeling those wounds would strengthen one's faith. A little doubt might push us to reach out beyond what is comfortable. For you see, doubt has a positive side. As a matter of fact, Mr. Luther, uncertainty is the heart of every explorer who ever dared cross the ocean in search of the new world. There would be no adventure without uncertainty. If we didn't question the status quo now and again, then we would never be open to new possibilities. How many of you, when imagining you were Thomas, hearing about Jesus' appearance, would have just dismissed it entirely? Occam's razor would indicate that that would really be the most logical conclusion. Your buddies are pulling your leg with a story about a teacher who comes back to life. It's probably April 1st or something like that. Seen from that perspective, then, Thomas's request to feel for nails in Jesus' hands is kind of a symbol of religious seeking. Without doubt, there would be no seekers. There would be no one who questioned a belief while everyone else kind of meekly went along with it. If you think about it, Thomas is quite a bold fellow. Stand aside. Let me put my hand in his side and see if it really is the resurrected Jesus. Not a whole lot of people who are brave enough and bold enough to make that claim, much less actually do it. The other thing I admire about Thomas in this story is how open he is to the possibility that this could actually be Jesus. If he were a mere doubter, as tradition has labeled him, then he would dismiss the possibility on the spot. Perhaps most of us would in that situation. But Thomas is like, you know what? Maybe it's true. Let's go find out. Thomas's faith is curious about the world. It is adventurous and perhaps even humble. Maybe Thomas questions himself. Maybe he's slow to assume that everything that he's ever heard about God or the Christian faith is all there is to know. Maybe he questions his own assumptions. Maybe he leaves open the possibility that God's bigger than his own assumptions. The Unitarian Universalist theologian Forrest Church wrote, "Two keys to religious living are humility and openness. Some people will take a look at how little they can finally know and either give up or make a leap of faith that answers all those unanswerable questions so that they don't have to think anymore. Other people will sense the dangers of openness and batten themselves down. But if you work the two principles together, remaining humble about how little we possibly can know while remaining open to how the sky is the limit in terms of our growth, there is a dynamic to life that is wondrous. I say to my congregants, if you believe in God, the best thing you can do for yourself is to suspend your belief for a while, because undoubtedly your God is too small and you need to grow beyond that God. On the other hand, if you don't believe in God, your very disbelief is a stumbling block. Kick it away and place your faith in something more ennobling than disbelief. Take a flyer, expand your purview, take a leap of faith." End quote. Whether you're a theist or an atheist, Forrest Church is an equal opportunity offender, isn't he? He doesn't let you rest wherever you are. That's what faith and doubt, taken together instead of separately, can do for us. I once went to a Chinese restaurant and got one of my favorite fortune cookies I think I've ever gotten. It read, "It isn't that life is filled with change, it's that life is change." Fortunes like that are nice reminders to wake up to life as it is rather than letting it pass me by. Life is change, and therefore it is precious because it goes by so fast, never to be repeated. Every moment is a one-of-a-kind event. Every day we're presented with miracles that we can walk and breathe and talk and listen and connect with each other. It's all a miracle. In a way, the only sin possible is taking all those everyday moments for granted. Only when death stalks us and we understand that our days are limited not intellectually, but at a gut level, then we can gather up those precious miracles of everyday living. We could wait until then. We could wait to appreciate life when we're face to face with death and then wish we had more time to spend with those we love. Or we can embrace doubt. I mean, of course, this positive side of doubt that is that nudge, that little niggling that makes us uncomfortable enough to go do the things we always wanted to do. That reminds us to be intentional about making some room in our life to spend time with kids before they grow up, with parents before they pass on, with our friends while they are still with us. We have to have just a little bit of doubt. That is doubt in the notion that our life today will always be just as it is. It won't. Doubt helps us to not take things for granted. It pushes us to find a faith that is more authentic, just as it did for a young William Channing, who could not abide his father's hypocrisy and so based his whole ministry on authenticity. Doubt spurred Mother Teresa to live out her faith through helping others, even though her soul found little peace. And doubt pushed Thomas, the twin, to speak up and be bold and ask if he could feel for nails and put his hand in Jesus' side while the other disciples just kind of went along with whatever story was going around at coffee hour that week. No, Thomas tried something new, and so can we. If we have the courage, have a little doubt and a little faith. May it be so for us. I love you. Happy Easter and amen.
Each week, we make an offering from the bounty we are blessed to enjoy. We do this in a spirit of love and generosity, aware that we have benefited from those who have gone before, those who in their turn gave generously. Our offering goes to support the work of love and justice undertaken by this community. Today's offering will also be shared by the SPCA of Westchester. Please see the website for more information. You can make your donations via credit card or PayPal using the links in your order of service. Please remember to give a little extra to compensate for the 3% surcharge. Or if you prefer, you can always mail us a check. The offering will now be given and gratefully received.
May you have joy this Easter, a joy born of life well lived. May you have love this Easter, a love stronger than death, bringing healing and new growth to your life and light where it feels dark. And may you have peace this Easter, peace which allows you to be open to the newness of the season and gives you reason to sing.
I want to thank the Reverend Dr. Joshua Snyder, beautiful, beautiful sermon. Kathy Williams and Sherry Brown, our lovely singers. And of course, Josiel Shaw, our pianist, and Marcus Shaw, the gorgeous French horn. Jane Podell, Anne Pearl, Breakout Rooms, Scott Crowder for representing the board, Margie Kemper, and who have I missed? I think that is Margie. I said Margie? Okay. Thank you all. And please go get a cup of coffee and join us for virtual coffee in just a few minutes.